Hello, everybody who's here already. I'm so excited for you to join. My name is Ryan, and we'll be starting in a few moments once we get a few more people joined into the Zoom. I do believe that Sarah and Katie are going to be saying something at the beginning, but while we're waiting for everybody to arrive, please start drinking because that's why we're here. I've already started with my fancy skeleton wine glass, but you guys should start with either the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, either the Nobilo or Kim Crawford, or if you decided to go for the more expensive wines, pour yourself a glass of the Sancerre. I do recommend that you guys turn on your cameras if possible, just so we can see everyone. And oh, wow, that was quick. Hello. Yeah, it's more fun when everybody can see each other's faces. It's definitely easier for me when I'm looking at people instead of a blank screen. So yeah, everybody who is here, please start with some form of Sauvignon Blanc, whether that be the Nobilo, the Kim Crawford, or the La Perrière Sancerre. And yeah, we're waiting for several more people, but start sipping. I think Sarah and Katie are going to take over soon, and I will just sit here and sip on my red. Also, I have set it up so that when people enter, it's auto muting. Don't feel like you need to stay muted the whole time. Feel free to come off mute and ask questions. I love questions. Hopefully I have the answer. Also, feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and I will address them every time we have a pause. Sarah, I saw that you came off mute. Is it time?
It's almost time.
Okay. 18. Okay. How many of you, while we're waiting for more people to join, how many of you are familiar with wine? Have you been to any wine tastings, any wine classes, anything like that? Couple yeses, couple nos. How many of you have never had a glass of wine before in your life? Anybody? We usually get at least one or two people who have literally never tasted wine before. So I'm glad that most of you at least have had some wine before. If you have not, you're in for a treat because we have an excellent selection of wines. Hopefully you have at least a couple of the ones that I suggested, but we will taste through all of them. We will also learn how to enhance your tasting experience and what to look for in other wines of this particular style and location. Still looks like we're still waiting on some more people. So for those of you who just joined, please start drinking because that's why we're here. So you're going to grab your lightest white, whether it is a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. I saw a couple of people cheers me. Cheers to you too. It's either going to be the Nobilo, the Kim Crawford, or the Sancerre Blanc. Oh, fantastic. You're taking W Set 3. That's exciting. What's your goal with that?
Hi, Priscilla from Hong Kong here, class of 93. No, I just was, my kids are all in college or about to go to college. So I've always enjoyed it and only knew white or red. So this has been a great learning experience, both from geography, which I'm not becoming familiar with. So I take the test in December.
So exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
I did all of my training through WSET also. And actually, randomly, I almost moved to Hong Kong as well, but I did.
Come back. I tried to find the wines actually, but I think 3 were sold out, and then 3 they just a third they didn't have, and then I was able to get I think the Kendall Jackson, which is
okay.
Good.
So you just have the Kendall Jackson, or did you buy? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
No worries, but you'll learn a lot in preparation for your test. So.
Thank you.
For those of you who just joined, please start drinking. You're going to grab either a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc or a Sancerre Blanc. So that's either the Nobilo, the Kim Crawford, or the La Perrière from Sancerre. If you don't have one of those, just drink something, because we're here to drink. So, so many people cheersing me when I say we're here to drink. Cheers to you too, absolutely. And I would recommend that you pour your wine from the bottle into something else. You get a reduced experience when you drink directly from the bottle. It doesn't need to be a fancy skeleton wine glass like I have. It can be any kind of wine glass, stemmed or stemless, or if you don't have that, it can be anything. I've had people do these in a red Solo cup or in a Dixie cup. So as long as you have something to pour that wine into so we can swirl and sniff it, you are good to go. And checking in with Sarah and Katie here. What do you think?
We can get started if that's okay.
Absolutely. Take it away.
Great. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual wine tasting held exclusively for members of the Annual Leadership Gift Circle and the Northeastern Loyalty Society. My name is Katie Shea, and I manage the Annual Leadership Gift Circle, which recognizes all donors who give $1,000 or more on a yearly basis.
And I'm Sarah Pelletier. I manage the Northeastern Loyalty Society, which recognizes undergraduate alumni who've made a gift of any amount for at least the last 2 years in a row. So we want to say a special thank you to everyone tuning in for being our most loyal and generous donors and for your continued support of Northeastern.
Yes. We also want to let you know that we'll be sending out a recording of the presentation via email next week. So please be on the lookout for that. And without further ado, we are happy to turn it over to Ryan.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you both for bringing me in today. I'm super excited to talk about wine with all of you. Obviously, I love wine. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And I talk a lot. So more than likely, we're going to go a little bit over time because I always do. So if you need to leave after an hour, please feel free to do that. I want to be respectful of your time. But also, if you feel like staying when I ultimately go over, we'll be talking about the Cabernet at that point. So on that note, hello everybody, my name is Ryan. I'm here from On the Nose Tastings, which is my own tasting company. And Sarah and Katie found me through Confetti Events. I just want to plug them really quickly. New York-based event company specializing in everything. Literally any event you could think of, Confetti will find you a way to make that happen for your group. But obviously the ones that involve alcohol are all for me. And I love to be a part of them. So let's talk about wine. Obviously, wine is delicious. It goes really well with food. It is going to make you drunk if you drink enough of it, which is always a plus. But there's more to it than that. There's more to just pouring it in a glass and drinking it. So in order to get deeper into each of these wines and to appreciate them to their fullest, we are going to incorporate as many senses as possible into the mix. The easiest way I found to do that is to follow the 5 S's. These are sight, swirl, sniff, sip, and savor. Don't feel like you need to take notes. We're just here to have fun. If you want to take notes, absolutely go ahead. I'm going to go through the 5 S's really quickly. It's going to take me about 10 minutes to talk my way through how we are going to taste each of these wines. But while we're doing that, for those of you who may have come in at the last minute, please start drinking. Grab your lightest white. It's going to be the Sauvignon Blanc or the Sancerre. So pour yourself a sip of that, and I'm going to talk about how we're going to taste this wine. So obviously, sight begins at the bottle. I have a tiny bottle here. It's not one of the ones that I put on the list because they were out, of course, at my wine store. But that doesn't matter. We can talk about wine labels on any bottle of wine. So first thing you're going to see here, the title of the wine, the balance of powers. In your case, it's either going to be Nobilo, Kim Crawford, or La Perrière Sancerre. You see here, Lodi. That is the region that this is from. In your case, it's either going to be Marlborough, New Zealand, or the Sancerre region in the Loire Valley in France. Right below that, I have a Suzhou. Suzhou in this case is the grape type or varietal. For all of you, it will be Sauvignon Blanc. Even those of you who are drinking Sancerre refers to the region that the Sauvignon Blanc is growing in. And that's because France labels their wines by region instead of by grape type. But we can talk about that later. So you're going to see on the back label a lot more information. It's going to tell you all about the wine that you're drinking, but probably the most important thing you're going to look for, and I don't know if you can see it on this, tiny little number there with a percent symbol. If you are drinking one of the New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, you'll see about a 12.3%. If you're drinking the Sancerre, it's more like 13%. Well, this number is the ABV, or alcohol by volume. Very important if you plan on drinking all 4 of these bottles of wine tonight. When you have your hangover tomorrow, you'll be able to calculate exactly how much ethanol you put in your body. But it's more important than that because our mouths perceive ethanol as thicker than water. So if you have a higher alcohol percentage in a wine, you can expect that wine to be more robust texturally and flavor-wise. So after you look at the label, you want to pour yourself some wine. I have about 2 finger widths here. That's what I usually like to do because I feel like that amount lets me not overcommit to the wine in case I don't like it, but also it's a small enough amount of wine that after you swirl it, it will breathe and open up a little bit more quickly. So once you have that wine in the glass, we want to look at it. We want to notice the color. We want to notice the clarity. You'll notice that your Sauvignon Blanc is going to be very, very pale straw color. The Sancerre is actually even very close to clear, no color at all. You'll notice that it is very transparent. There's not haziness. You might notice a little bit of haziness in the Chardonnay, but Sauvignon Blancs tend to be crystal clear. You want to do a quick swirl around the glass, just so you can see the way that the wine reacts to the glass itself. In the case of this Suzhou, which is a very heavy red wine, you'll notice that all of these little teardrops start to appear. Now, those teardrops are known as wine legs, and they also tell us a little bit about the wine. In the Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to notice, rather than seeing a whole bunch of teardrops, you're going to see a little bit more of just like a sheet kind of hanging there, and maybe after 30 seconds or so, a couple teardrops will form. Well, these wine legs, these teardrops, they actually tell us a couple things about the wine. You get more wine legs that are fatter and slower moving if you have higher alcohol percentage, higher residual sugar content, and or higher tannin content. Now, remember the word tannin because we're going to get there later. But since the Sauvignon Blanc has lower alcohol content, lower sugar content, and lower tannin content, you don't get the presence of the wine legs like we do in the heavier, more robust reds. So after you have looked at the wine, we move on to the next S, which is swirl. Swirling is super important to the wine experience. There are a couple different ways you can do it depending on your glass. If you have a standard tapered wine glass with a stem and you're worried about spilling because you've never swirled before, you can take the base of it and put it on the table in front of you. Don't put it on your phone because you will probably spill. But if this is the table in front of you and you are swirling, keep the base of it on that table. It keeps the center of gravity perpendicular and you're not going to spill. If you have a flared wine glass, don't do that because you will spill. For those of you who have a stemless wine glass, you'll notice that it's a little bit awkward to get the wine moving this way. I actually like to take it from the top of the glass like that and swirl. It changes the pivot point. It's not elegant, but it does the job, which is what we need it to do. For those of you who have a solo cup or a Dixie cup or, I don't know, a plastic bowl, whatever, you're gonna have to figure out a way to do that on your own, so good luck. But back to swirling. Why do we do it? Obviously, it makes us look really fancy, even when we're holding a skeleton cup, but it's more than that. What we're trying to do here is to bring out the most interesting qualities of the wine. And as we're swirling, we're causing some of that alcohol to evaporate, which is going to release all of those beautiful aromas known as the wine bouquet up into the top of the glass and eventually into our face. Also, we are adding oxygen into the mix, which is super important because of that word that I told you to remember from a moment ago, Tannins. Tannins are these naturally occurring bitter compounds that we find in all wines. They are present in the skins, the seeds, and any kind of oak barrel that we're going to be aging the wine in. Tannins are important because as they are antioxidants, they allow the wine to age and not turn into vinegar. But they do this by binding onto the proteins in the wine, which is great for aging, but bad for tasting and smelling. So as we are swirling, we are adding oxygen into the mix, breaking down those tannin bonds, releasing more aroma, more flavor, and actually smoothing out the texture. For those of you who may not know what tannins taste or feel like, if you've ever poured yourself a glass of heavy red wine from a brand newly opened bottle and taken a sip before you swirled it and notice how it's super sharp and kind of bites you, that is the tannins. And then if you came back to that same glass of wine an hour later and took a sip, it was super smooth. That is because the tannins have broken down in the presence of oxygen. The last thing we're going to do when we are swirling is we are changing the temperature of the wine, specifically with the white wines. Every wine has an ideal temperature. The Sauvignon Blanc that you're drinking, we want it ice cold because it's a very light wine, so 38 to 44 degrees. But the next wine we're going to get to, the Chardonnay, we want it significantly warmer. 55 to 58 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal temperature for Chardonnay. So if you're drinking it right out of the refrigerator, ice cold, you're going to notice it's super bitter, but as you swirl and bring up the temperature, it's going to become a lot more aromatic and a lot more pleasantly flavored. So after we have swirled and done all of this fantastic stuff to the wine, we move on to the sniff. Now, there are a couple different ways you can sniff on a glass to get a slightly different aroma profile, but you want to make sure that before every sniff, you do a swirl. Again, because we are releasing as much of that bouquet of aromas into the glass as possible. So after you have swirled, you want to do the basic sniff. You're just going to kind of put your nose in the bottom of the glass here. Now, right here, you're going to be getting the most intense aromas coming off of the wine, but you're also going to be getting some of that evaporating alcohol, which tends to cover up the more subtle aromas in the wine, especially when you are drinking a brand new bottle, like you've just popped it open and haven't done enough swirling, you're going to get a lot of that alcohol there. So you want to make note of whatever strong aromas you're getting out, and then you want to move on to the second place. So you're going to do another swirl, and instead of putting your nose here, you're actually going to take the tip of your nose and put it to the upper rim of the glass here. Now don't talk into the glass because you'll just smell your breath. But ideally, right here, we're going to be bypassing some of that evaporating alcohol and getting into the more subtle aromas. For the Sauvignon Blanc, you know, the primary aromas, you're going to be smelling green apple. You might be getting some lemon rind, some grapefruit, something like that. But you're missing out on all of the weird aromas when you're down here. So up here, you might notice a little bit of freshly cut grass. You might notice a little bit of honeysuckle, something that was covered up by the alcohol. Now, if you want to take that even a step further, you can utilize a bourbon tasting technique to mitigate all of that evaporating alcohol. You're going to do another swirl, take the tip of your nose and put it up here, but instead of just sniffing with your mouth closed, you're going to leave your mouth open. You're going to put the top of your, or the back of your tongue up to close that off, and it looks really weird, super effective. So it looks like this. So you're going to be breathing in through your nose while your mouth is open. All of the alcohol is going to go into your mouth, and you're just going to get wine smell, which is fantastic. Now, if you're having a hard time picking out individual aroma components like green apple or grass, and it just smells like wine, don't worry. We'll talk about the way each of these wines is going to smell, and we can talk about how you can develop that smelling ability as we go along. But make note of any of those aromas that you're getting so that you can compare them to the flavor of the wine, because sometimes it's a direct comparison. You taste everything you smell, but sometimes the wine lies to you and it's going to taste completely different than the way it smells. And it's really fun game to play with the wine. So after we have smelled it, we move on to the sip. Now, I say sip because we've all been at home during COVID. We've all been drinking a lot and maybe a little bit too quickly. So we're going to slow it down. Most people, when they take a sip of really any beverage, they let it kind of hit right in the middle of their tongue and then spread out from there. This is great if you're trying to taste everything at the same time. But if you're trying to pinpoint individual flavors, an easier way to do that, I just got something. Enable a live transcription. Sure. I don't know what that is, but we're going to do it. So I lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. So if you let that liquid hit the middle of your tongue and then spread out, you're tasting everything, but it might be difficult for you to taste individual things. So we are going to kind of hack this and start at the very tip of our tongue. So you let a sip of that wine just sit there right at the tip of your tongue. And the reason we're doing this is because there are several different areas on your tongue that perceive different flavor types. So you start at the tip of your tongue where you taste sweet things. So in the Sauvignon Blanc, this is where you're going to taste apple. This is where you're going to taste any kind of stone fruit like apricot or pear. And maybe even a little bit of honey or honeysuckle. But then you're going to take that sip and you're going to scoot it back on the side of your tongue about 1 centimeter. Now, right here, this is where we perceive sour and acidic flavors. So any kind of citrus is going to appear here. You're going to taste lemon. You're going to taste grapefruit. You might taste a little bit of sour berry there, like gooseberry or something. And then you're going to move it back another centimeter on the side. And this is where we perceive salty and savory and earthy flavors. So it sounds a little bit crazy to try and find saltiness in a white wine, but you will notice that all of these Sauvignon Blancs that I put on the list have a little bit of a briny component, and you'll get a little bit of salt right there mixed with a little bit of minerality. And then on your way back to the throat, right in the middle back part of your tongue, this is where we perceive the bitter compounds. So after you've gone through sweet and citrus and briny, earthy, right in the middle back part of your tongue, all of that bitterness is going to creep back in. In the case of the Sauvignon Blanc, this is where you're going to get grapefruit rind and lemon rind and the taste of dull apple peel. Like if you've ever bitten into a Granny Smith apple and just got the peel, it's kind of like that dull bitterness right there. And then after you've noticed all of that, you're going to swallow. But that's not where it stops, because every wine has an aftertaste known as a finish. Something like this Sauvignon Blanc, 5 to 10 seconds, you might get another flavor or two popping out and then it's gone. But something heavy like this, or like the Cabernet Sauvignon that we'll be tasting at the end, some of those can have a finish upwards of 2 minutes, where you'll continue to get more flavors evolving and popping out, and you might actually get a full-on texture shift in your empty mouth, which is always really weird and really interesting to see. So after you have tasted all of this, the last S is savor. And I say savor because all of this stuff that we're doing, the swirling, the exposing to oxygen, the changing of the temperature, that's going to drastically change the flavor, texture, and aroma of this wine from the moment you pour it to 10 minutes later when you've finished your first glass or your first couple sips. And it's really fun to watch that evolution as we go along. Okay, do you guys have any questions about any of that so far? No? Okay, cool. Well, here we go. Let's talk about Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon Blanc is a very popular grape, grows several different regions in the world, but the most notable regions are the Marlborough region of New Zealand, the Sancerre region in the Loire Valley in France, and California. All of these have completely different flavor and aroma profiles and completely different textures. And all of that is related to the climate and the soil. We refer to this in wine lingo as the terroir, Terroir. And all of this is kind of, the terroir refers to everything that goes into producing the grapes. So in the case of the terroir in Marlborough, New Zealand, it's cold. It's less sunlight, less direct sunlight than someplace like California. And the soil quality is very different than France or California. So when we are going out to buy a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, specifically from Marlborough, we expect a very specific aroma and flavor profile. When you smell it, you're going to smell Granny Smith apple. You're going to smell tart berries like gooseberry. You're going to smell lemon. You're going to smell fresh cut grass and green bell peppers. And you're going to smell maybe even a little bit of tropical fruit in there, a hint of pineapple, a hint of mango. And then when you taste it, You get right up at the front of your tongue, you get a little bit of Granny Smith apple and some sweet berry, a little bit of pear. As you move it back, you transition through the lemon, the grapefruit, the briny minerality, and then at the end, you get all of those bitter things popping back in. On the finish, you'll notice that it transfers from bitter back to a nice sweet citrus, which is great because we don't want our white wines to end on a harsh bitter note. You'll notice that the acidity of a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is very, very present and very obvious. It should be mouth puckering, almost like straight lemon juice, especially when you get to that area. It's very light in texture and very acid heavy. For those of you who are drinking the Sancerre, on the other hand, because the soil quality in the Sancerre region it's mainly limestone and chalk, very, very mineral heavy. The climate is a little bit cooler, a little bit less sunlight compared to California. So we have similar growing conditions with a different soil composition. So when you smell it, you're going to notice that you do get that characteristic Sauvignon Blanc, Granny Smith apple smell. You might smell a little bit of pear, some lemon, some grapefruit. But something else that you'll notice that's pretty specific to Sancerre is you get a lot of minerality. You're going to smell wet sidewalk. And I know that that sounds crazy, but it's that smell of when you're standing outside and the first couple raindrops hit on a hot day, the smell that comes up from the sidewalk that smells like kind of gravel and thin dust. That is the minerality that you're going to smell in a glass of Sancerre. And actually, you might even smell a little bit of it in the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc as well. But the real difference with the Sancerre comes when you taste it, because the flavor profile is a little bit similar. You're going to taste some green apple, you're going to taste some pear, you're going to get a little bit of green, maybe a little bit of grassiness, but the big component here is the minerality. You get a lot of brininess, you get a lot of mineral flavors, like a little bit of metal in there. It's a little bit sharper in that sense, but in the other direction, it's a lot less acidic. So when you taste it, it's going to be a lot smoother. It's going to make your mouth water a little bit less than a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And I know that none of you have a California Sauvignon Blanc, but if we talk about that in comparison, because of the increased sunlight, the increased heat, these grapes produce a lot more sugar relative to acid. So after fermentation, the alcohol percentage is higher, which leads to a more robust wine texturally, flavor-wise. It changes a little bit and becomes less green and less acidic and a little bit more tropical and sweet. So there is a Sauvignon Blanc out there for all of you, depending on your tastes. It just depends on what kind you want. Let's talk about food pairing. So New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, because of its bright acidity, its very, very citrusy and green flavor profile, these are going to go really well with light, tangy foods and salady things. So cheese-wise, you're going to want to pair it with a goat cheese or a feta, something that's light, has a little bit of creaminess, but also has that tangy acidity to it. That's going to counter the acidity in the Sauvignon Blanc really well. I mentioned salad because my absolute favorite thing to pair with a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is a bed of fresh arugula with some crumbled fresh goat cheese and a squeeze of fresh lemon. It sounds super simple, and I know a lot of people don't like arugula, but those three things together paired with a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is absolute perfection, I promise. And when you try it, I would recommend that you take a bite of the salad, chew it all up, get it all over your taste buds, swallow it completely, and then taste the wine. The reason we're doing this is because when you're eating the foods, those flavors and textures are actually imprinting themselves on your taste buds so that when you swallow and then taste the wine, all of those flavors and textures are not present in the flavor of the wine because your taste buds have kind of been like, okay, been there, done that, let's try something else. And so in that way, you can actually influence the flavor of a wine pretty dramatically. If you have a really bad bottle of wine, you just have to find the right foods and it'll taste amazing. However, I'm not saying go drink bad wine because there's so much good wine out there. Don't waste your time. Okay, so the Sancerre, pairing wise, because it's less acidic, and has more of that minerality. It goes so well with any kind of seafood, specifically shellfish, and more specifically raw oysters. So if you are a fan of raw oysters, next time you go out, get a dozen or a half dozen. I eat a lot. So I get a dozen and a bottle of Sancerre. And the minerality in the Sancerre brings out all of those briny, oceany flavors in the oysters, and it's the absolute perfect combination. Okay, let me see here. I'm trying to be aware of the time because last time I went significantly over. So do you guys have any questions about Sauvignon Blanc? Is anybody drinking the Sancerre right now, or is everybody drinking New Zealand? Cool, everybody's quiet. Don't worry, you'll get chattier as you get drunk. So let's see. On that note, I want you guys to go ahead and finish what you have in your glass, and we are going to move on to the Chardonnay. You may think to yourself, oh, I should rinse out my glass with water. Don't do it. We're going to rinse it out with wine. We're actually going to rinse it with the Chardonnay. So you're going to take a little bit of Chardonnay, pour it into your empty glass, and you're going to swirl it around. You can even roll it around the glass. What we're trying to do here is remove all of the remaining Sauvignon Blanc with that little bit of Chardonnay, and then you're going to drink that. I know it sounds crazy, but if you drink that weird mixture, it actually provides a bridge for your palate to help you get from that super acidic Sauvignon Blanc into that easier, smoother Chardonnay. And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can improve our nose and our smelling ability. So I talked in the beginning about how this wine might just smell like wine, and it might be difficult to pinpoint any of these aromas that I'm talking about, but we're going to do a little experiment here when you pour yourself this Chardonnay. And I'm going to show you that it's really easy to develop your nose. It just takes practice. So once you've all poured that Chardonnay, I want you to smell it and see if you can pick out any aromas. And then after that, I want you to think about vanilla. Think about a vanilla candle, a Yankee candle, think about creme brulee, think about something that's pretty vanilla heavy, and then go back and smell it. And you'll notice that the vanilla comes right to the front of the aroma profile. Now, take it away from your face, and we're going to change the aroma profile and bring something else to the front. So instead of thinking about vanilla, I want you guys to think about apple. Not crisp Granny Smith apple, but a little bit more of like a baked apple, like apple pie. So think about apple pie, and then come back to the wine, and you'll notice that the vanilla has kind of receded, and you get a little bit more of that sweet fruit aroma. Is anybody experiencing that? I saw a couple head nods. Fantastic. So this works because our brains are amazing. It's not because I went to Hogwarts and I'm like trying to cast a spell on you guys. This is just a product of our amazing brain. We have the ability as humans to memorize very, very vividly aromas and flavors, and then recall them nearly as vividly and remember them and relive them in that moment. So like, for example, I could say to you, think about pepperoni pizza, and you'd immediately be able to know exactly what that smelled like, what it tasted like. Your mouth is probably watering. And when we are actively tasting wine, what we're trying to do is to pull on the memories of the things we have smelled and tasted in the past, and then make that connection to the active tasting process so that we can identify them in the moment. And that brings us back to Chardonnay. So both of these, the Kendall Jackson Vintners Reserve and the Stag's Leap Caria Chardonnay, are from California. The Kendall Jackson is California General, meaning that they have sourced the grapes from several different growing regions in California. And the Stag's Leap is from Napa specifically. And you're going to see on wine bottles, either they're going to have something very specific about the wine region like Lodi or Paso Robles or Napa or something like that, or you'll see something general like California. Oftentimes when you see something that says California and doesn't go more specific than that, it tends to be a little bit lower quality, but not always. And the reason that they are very specific with their region, like Lodi, Paso Robles, Napa, is because they are proud of the area that they're growing these grapes in, that has a lot of prestige associated with it. And they generally take a lot more pride in their product. But I chose the Kendall Jackson because it is a fantastic example of a California big, bold, creamy, buttery Chardonnay. It is 13.5% alcohol. For those of you who are drinking the Stag's Leap, it's actually 14.5%. That is a bold Chardonnay. But let's talk about the Kendall Jackson for a moment. So we talked about how you're going to be smelling vanilla. I feel a sneeze coming on, so it might come at any moment. I apologize. Beyond that vanilla, you're going to be smelling that baked apple. You're going to be smelling a little bit of lemon. You're going to be smelling some peach and some pear. And you might even get a little bit of tropical fruit like pineapple or mango in there. And I want to go back to the vanilla that you're smelling, because that vanilla is also associated with a little bit of a buttery aroma as well. So you might get a little bit of like a creme brulee aroma as it's all popped together there. Now, when you taste this, I'm assuming that most of you pulled this right out of the refrigerator, so it's still probably around 40 degrees. When you first taste this, it's going to be a little bit sharp, a little bit bitter, and a little bit dull. But I want you to notice any flavors that pop out as it's still cold. And then I want you to hold on to your glass like this, because I want you to warm that up. Ideal temperature for Chardonnay is just below room temperature, 55 to 58 degrees. So if you're drinking it at 40 degrees right now, you're only getting the bitter, awful components. And if you have thought to yourself in the past, I hate Chardonnay, you might have just been drinking it too cold, and you might actually like it. Yeah, you know what? It's possible, Kate. And actually, it's not just that. Chardonnay tends to be a very polarizing wine because it can be completely opposite styles depending on where it's from. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So back to the Kendall Jackson. Once you've gotten it warmed up and you taste it, you're going to notice that right up front, right on the tip of your tongue, you get that vanilla. You get a little bit of honey. You get a little bit of that sweet cooked apple, and you're going to get some of that tropical fruit there, a little bit of pineapple, a little bit of mango. As you move it back, you get more of that acidity popping out. So you're going to get a little bit of lemon. You're going to get a little bit of lemon oil, and you're going to get a little bit of some of that more acidic quality from the pineapple. You will notice that there is a briny minerality to this, and hopefully you guys will notice this from now on, and it will be a part of your tasting, because most wine has a little bit of brininess or a little bit of a funk to it. And then on the back part of your tongue, you're going to notice a little bit of spiciness, almost like a hint of pepper. And then on the finish, it unfortunately does not go to that beautiful fruit return that we had in the Sauvignon Blanc. You're going to notice that it actually has a little bit of a dull bitterness at the end in the form of like apple skin or citrus rind. You'll get a little bit of that lemon rind in there.
Ryan, we asked a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh my goodness. Let me check that out. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Patricia, don't worry about being in PJs. I'm keeping the camera here because I'm actually wearing pajama pants. So cheers to that. Let's see, and who has questions? Vintner's Reserve. So Vintner is the winemaker. And so in this case, it was just their way of saying, hey, even though it's a California Chardonnay, it's our Vintner's Reserve, so it's fancy and you should buy it. It's just their title for it. It doesn't actually mean anything. Mike, can you overswirl your wine? Technically, yes. You can overexpose it to oxygen and cause it to fully oxidize and turn into vinegar ultimately. But over the course of you sitting there and drinking a glass of wine, it's pretty much impossible for you to overswirl it. I have to keep putting my wine glass down because it's become my nervous tick. I just sit there and swirl everything. People call me out a lot because I'll be swirling a glass of water. So yes, long answer short, no, you cannot overswirl your wine. It's just going to make it smooth out and really show all of its beautiful characteristics that were hidden by the tannin antioxidants. Grand Reserve. Okay, so in this case, Kate and James, the Vintage Reserve is just telling you it's special. The Grand Reserve is telling you it's extra special. It's not a particular wine term. This is just Kendall Jackson's own classification system. There are comparable classification systems over in France that are actually, they are actually part of the law, like the wine law there. You'll have Grand Cru, Premier Cru, all of these things. It just kind of tells you the level of care and ultimately what you're going to pay for that wine. But yeah, you probably just got a slightly upgraded version from the Vineyards Reserve. Is it good? Yeah, fantastic. Okay. Did you notice any other flavors or aromas that were different than what I was talking about?
I don't know. I couldn't really get past the creme brulee. I like creme brulee, and
Same.
after you said that, I was hooked.
Well, you know what? That brings up a great point. We'll talk about pairings for Chardonnay. I mean, when we were talking about Sauvignon Blanc, because of the high acidity and the green flavors, you want to pair it with light and green things. But with Chardonnay, because especially a California Chardonnay, because it's so creamy and buttery, it goes really well with heavier foods, but it also goes really well with dessert. Excuse me. So a California Chardonnay would be great with a creme brulee. It would be great with buttered popcorn. It would be fantastic with apple pie. It would go great with any kind of dairy infused thing like a creamy pasta, with a cheese board, specifically heavier, creamier cheeses like brie and Gouda and sharp cheddar are going to go really well with a Chardonnay. I do want to talk for a moment about the Stag's Leap. So this is from Napa, and that plays into the fact that this is 14.5% alcohol Chardonnay, because Napa has a lot of sunlight and a lot of heat. And as a result, the grapes produce a lot more sugar, which then leads to a higher alcohol percentage. But for those of you who are drinking the Stag's Leap, you'll notice that it is not your typical California Chardonnay, because when we look at a California Chardonnay, we expect big and bold, buttery, and lots of vanilla. But in the Stag's Leap, they actually tried to take it a little bit more of like a Burgundian approach, specifically something you would find in the Chablis region. And so you have less creaminess, less butteriness, and less vanilla. But you do get a lot of that citrus. So you'll smell, instead of creme brulee heavy, you'll get almost like a lemon curd aroma coming off of it. You'll get a little bit of straight lemon. You'll get some orange. You'll get some spices in there, a little bit of clove and cinnamon. You'll notice, does anybody have the Stag's Leap? I don't know that anybody got it. Well, if you decide to go out and get it, this is what you'll expect. The body on it is a little bit thinner than your typical California Chardonnay, even though it's higher alcohol percentage. The fact of, or the way that they produced it leads it to be a little bit thinner and a little bit texturally lighter. But you do get all of those typical Chardonnay flavors in there. Lots of stone fruit, pear, you'll get nectarine, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of vanilla, and a little bit of cinnamon in there. So the reason I brought up Burgundian approach, specifically Chablis, is because the Burgundy region in France produces the exact opposite version of Chardonnay. And this is for several different reasons. I'm going to talk about how we produce the California Chardonnay and how we produce the Burgundian Chardonnay. So in California, lots of heat, lots of sunlight produces more sugar, less acid. So that leads to higher alcohol percentage and more robust flavors. It also produces a little bit more tropical flavors in that wine. After the normal fermentation, we add another step called malolactic fermentation. And this is where we allow the microbes to convert the tart, crisp apple acid that is called malic acid into the smooth, creamy lactic acid that we find in all dairy products. So that's where you get a buttery, creamy mouthfeel in a California Chardonnay. The last thing we do is we age it in a new American oak barrel. And this is very important because oak, in addition to being a porous surface that allows a little bit of exchange of gases to help the wine produce more subtlety, the oak itself has more tannins in it that it infuses into the wine, as well as a chemical compound called vanillin. And for those of you who are bakers, you'll know that vanillin is artificial vanilla extract. It is the primary flavor and aroma compound in anything vanilla, and it is very present in American oak. So when you age something in an American oak barrel, it infuses it with that vanilla. Now, across the pond in France, in Burgundy, it's cooler, so less sugar, a little bit higher acid, which leads to a lighter texture and lower alcohol percentage. They do less malolactic fermentation because they want to maintain its crisp acidity. And then if they age it in oak, it's going to be in either a French oak, which has a little bit more mild aroma and flavor component, or they're going to use a used oak barrel, something that all of the vanilla and most of the tannins have been leached out in the past. There's also the option of using an aroma and flavor neutral vessel like stainless steel or cement. So if you like a Chardonnay but don't like butter or vanilla, try something from Chablis, or even the Macon Village area in a different part of Burgundy, because Chablis are expensive. They're like $60 to $100 a bottle, but they're delicious. And when I say Chablis, I'm not talking about the Carlo Rossi jug that says Chablis. That is not Chablis. That is a hangover, so don't buy it. Okay, on that note, next wine, we are going to move on to the Pinot Noir. You're either going to have the Pinot Project, which is another one of those general California wines, or you're going to have the Elk Cove Estate Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley. And we'll talk about those in a moment. Gonna check out the chat. Sold out everywhere. Stag's Leap must be good. It is absolutely delicious. If you guys like Chardonnay and want to try some more expensive California Chardonnays, specifically if you like a buttery Chardonnay, I would recommend checking out the Rombauer. I think it's about $40 to $50 a bottle, very buttery, lots of vanilla, really delicious and easy to drink. If you're looking for something a little bit on the lighter side, you can check out Far Niente. It's very expensive. I think it's like $75 or something like that for the bottle, but it's really, really interesting. It's kind of California meets Burgundy in the middle. Really, really beautiful wine. Brian's Carlo Rossi is great though. Curious, Brian, which Carlo Rossi do you like to drink? I haven't had it in a while, so I'm just curious your particular Carlo Rossi flavor.
I usually get that huge jug of the sangria.
Nice. And do you drink it all in one sitting?
No, that would be
Good
a
plan.
terrible morning after, I think.
Yes, it would. I have to tell you guys, my very first wine experience was stealing a little bit of the box of Franzia that my dad had in the refrigerator. Yes, my dad drinks much better wine now, thankfully, but yeah, when I was growing up, it was Franzia all the way. And on that note, let's talk about Pinot Noir. So, how many of you like Pinot Noir? A couple of you. Priscilla's like, yes, me. So Pinot Noir is another one of those wines that you either love it or you don't really like it. And that's because of its earthiness. Pinot Noir is known for having a lot of weird, funky things that you really don't think you want to consume, but actually make some really interesting complexity in a wine. For those of you drinking the Pinot Project, the reason I chose this one is because even though it's a California Pinot Noir, it has a lot of the earthiness that you would expect from the Willamette Valley. And oddly enough, the Elk Cove has a little bit less of the earthiness than you would expect from the Willamette Valley. But let's talk about the Pinot Project first. So this is 13.5% alcohol. So it's a little bit higher percentage than the Sauvignon Blanc, but it's the same as the Chardonnay. So you can expect that it'll have a similar robustness, but you will notice that the acidity is a little bit higher in the Pinot Noir than the Chardonnay. So that might give it a misleading feeling in your mouth. It might feel a little bit lighter than you would expect. But when you smell this, when you swirl and sniff, you are going to notice right up front cherry. Cherry is the primary fruit that you're going to find in pretty much all Pinot Noir. You might get some other berries in there as well, a little bit of blueberry, a hint of blackberry, but then you're going to notice all the funk in there. So you're going to smell wood, you're going to smell dirt, you're going to smell dried leaves and leather and smoke, and all of that sounds inedible, but it actually pairs really well with food, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So after you have smelled all those weird things, you're going to taste it, and right up front, you're going to get cherry, you're going to get a little bit of sweet strawberry, you're going to get a hint of vanilla because this was aged in oak, and then after you start moving it back, you're going to notice a little bit of cranberry and a little bit of black currant on the side of your tongue. Go back a little bit further, you get all of that funky earthiness starting to come in. So this is where you're going to taste the leather and the smoke and the dried leaves. It might taste a little bit like mushroom or like a forest floor smells. I know that sounds weird, but people pay a lot of money to drink a glass of forest floor, and we'll talk about that in a moment too. For those of you who are drinking the Elk Cove, this one is a little bit less earthy than your typical Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. It's the same alcohol percentage, so 13.5%, but when you smell it, it's going to be overwhelming cherry. It's like cherry at the front with vanilla, a little bit of clove, a little bit of cinnamon, but you're not getting a ton of that earthiness from the Elk Cove. And then when you taste it, instead of having cherry and then tons of earthiness, you get cherry and plum, and then you get a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg, and then right at the end you get that mushroom and dirt creeping in. Very, very interesting expressions of Pinot Noir, and really even more interesting in the fact that they've kind of reversed flavor and aroma profiles for their region. While you're sipping on that, I would recommend continuing to swirl a lot more, because reds have a lot more tannins in them, and they're going to need a lot more swirling for them to smooth out. I think actually somebody just asked that. Okay, thank you, Sarah, for responding to Kara. And can you do the swirl out between reds as well? Yeah, you can do that. You can do the wine rinse in between, going from white to red. And then drinking that weird mixture. I know it sounds crazy, but it will help you get into the new wine a little bit more quickly. So Pinot Noir, let's talk about the different regions. So obviously we have California, we have the Willamette Valley in Oregon, and then we go back to the Burgundy region again in France, because Burgundy produces not only Chardonnay, but also Pinot Noir. And you'll find if you look around at the different wine regions around the world, those two are often paired up in the same area because they like the same growing conditions. But Pinot Noir, as a general rule, is a very difficult grape to grow because it has very thin skin. It is damaged easily. It gets sunburned easily. Yes, grapes can get a sunburn. And also it is mildew prone in cooler climates. So in Burgundy and the Willamette Valley, it takes a lot more effort to produce a good wine, which contributes to the fact that Burgundy and Willamette Valley Pinot Noirs are much more expensive than they are in California. Flavor and aroma wise, California, because of the higher heat and sunlight, you're going to produce generally a fruitier, more robust Pinot Noir that drinks a little bit more like a Syrah. But if you go up to the Willamette Valley in Oregon, because it's more overcast, they get a lot more rain, the ripening season is a little bit longer, you get more earthiness in the wine, you develop a lot more complexity and a little bit less of that fruit-forward character that we expect from a warmer climate. And then if you go all the way over to Burgundy, again, same thing, climate, cool, long ripening season, but the soil quality there gives a lot more earthiness to these Burgundian Pinot Noirs. And, you know, I kept saying at the beginning, there's a lot of funk here. but people who love that funk are willing to pay for it. The most expensive Pinot Noir right now is, or ever, I think, was one of the Romani Conti Grand Cru, and it was like $20,000 a bottle. I've never had it, obviously, but I've heard that it's like drinking a glass of dirt and mushrooms mixed together. So apparently in the wine world, they say that your palate is fully realized when all you ever want to drink is a Burgundian Pinot Noir. But I drink everything, so apparently I'm not there yet. Pairing wise, because of all the funk in Pinot Noir, it goes really well with funky foods. So meat wise, lamb is going to be great with Pinot Noir because that gaminess. I grew up in a household full of hunters, so we always had a freezer full of venison, elk, duck, and pheasant. All of those gamey foods go really well with Pinot Noir. Earthy foods as well, like mushrooms, truffles, walnuts, anything kind of dark and funky is going to be perfect with a Pinot Noir. Cheese wise, you can get a little bit of a funkier cheese or a smoky cheese. Smoked Gouda with a Pinot Noir is absolute heaven, and I definitely recommend you try it. Questions about Pinot Noir? Do you guys like the Pinot Noir? Okay, does anybody hate it? I'm just curious. Especially if you got the Pinot Project, it might be a little too earthy for some of you. Nope. Okay. Is anybody buzzed yet? Drunk? Ooh, okay, perfect. This is my third tasting of the day, and I have not been drinking along because I'm a bad teacher when I'm drunk. I've found that out a long time ago. Okay, on that note, let's move away from the Pinot Noir, and you're gonna pour yourself some Cabernet Sauvignon. Go ahead and do the wine rinse, and if you feel like you poured yourself too much Pinot Noir and don't wanna chug, grab a different glass and save that Pinot for later. So on the list here, we have the Jaylor Cabernet Sauvignon from Paso Robles. Now, Paso Robles is one of those small regions that produces really excellent wine. And so they wanted to make sure that you knew it was from Paso Robles. And if you want to kind of see how micro region Paso Robles is, we have the United States, California, Central Coast, San Luis Obispo County, Paso Robles. So there's a lot of levels there, but Paso Robles is the most important one. This Cabernet is 13.8% alcohol, which is relatively low for a California Cabernet. You usually expect them to be 14.5 to 15.5%. But this one, it's a really nice expression of the flavor and aroma profile of a California Cabernet. Oh, I have to respond to this thing in the chat right now. It does not matter which direction you swirl in. I generally find that people who are right-handed tend to swirl counterclockwise, and people who are left-handed tend to swirl clockwise. But it really just depends on what you figure out is the best way for you to not spill everywhere. So good luck. Back to this. So this Jaylor, when you smell it, I would also recommend that you swirl this a lot because Cabernet Sauvignon is one of the most tannic wines that you can get. There's a ton of tannin content in there, and it takes a lot of oxygen to break it down and open up. But ultimately, you're going to be smelling a lot of different things. You're going to be smelling vanilla. You're going to be smelling cherry and blackberry and black currant and chocolate and plum and black pepper. You're going to get some dirt and some smoke and some mushroom and some leather. It's just like I could keep saying word after word after word, but they're all in there because Cabernet Sauvignon is so complex, and that's why people love it. It's actually the most popular and most widely planted grape on the planet, which is a little bit crazy because it is a relatively new grape. It's actually a hybrid that was produced in the Bordeaux region a couple hundred years ago. It is the child of Sauvignon Blanc, the white grape that we started with, and Cabernet Franc, which is one of the blending grapes from the Bordeaux region. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. So after you have smelled all of these amazing flavors, go ahead and taste it. And you'll notice that initially it's got a bite to it because you've not swirled it enough. But that bite is tannins, and you're going to notice that as you kind of move it through your mouth, those tannins make your mouth dry. You're going to feel sandpapery dryness on the back of your tongue. You might even get it towards the front of your mouth, and that is just the tannins on their own. But once you get past that, right at the tip of your tongue, you get sweet vanilla, you get cherry pie, you get blackberry and blueberry. As you move back a little bit, you get some cranberry and black currant. Go back a little bit further and you get into the earthiness. You might even get a little bit of savory, like meaty flavor in there, mixed in with a little bit of salt and a little bit of that smoke and dirt. And then at the back part of your tongue, that's where we get that sandpapery feeling from the tannins. You're also going to notice that you get a hint of citrus rind in there, which is a little bit unexpected in a red wine, but you also get a little bit of that apple skin, that dull bitterness that you find in an apple skin or a grape skin. I've found that the finish on this is a little bit more fruit forward. It doesn't leave you with that bitterness. It actually evolves in a really nice, pleasant way. For those of you who are drinking the Adaptation Cabernet Sauvignon, I don't know if anybody is. I suggested it because it's an absolutely delicious wine. I think it was like $40 a bottle or something, but should be priced at around 100. Great bargain if you can find it. Definitely recommend it. So the Adaptation is 14.6% alcohol, so more along the lines of what you would expect in a California Cabernet. It is similar aroma profile, lots of plum. You're gonna get a little bit less cherry in this, and it's a little bit more plum heavy, blackberry, some vanilla, some chocolate. And then when you taste it, it's going to be a little bit smoother than the Jaylor, but you definitely get all of that complexity. You can pretty much expect certain flavors and aromas out of a California Cabernet. And that's for a very specific reason, because they are absolutely delicious. And so they try to make them taste like that all the time. Pairing wise, Cabernet Sauvignon, because it is a very heavy wine, it goes really, really well with really heavy foods. My ideal pairing with a nice bottle of California Cab is a ribeye, because the ribeye has a lot of fat. It has a lot of flavor. It's going to stand up to the Cabernet, especially if you do it on the grill. You get a little bit of that smokiness, that earthy char in there that's going to really bring out some nice flavors. Cheese wise, funkier the better. Blue cheese, Roquefort, Camembert, anything with like a bite to it is going to remove some of the bite from the Cabernet, and it's going to make it taste a little bit more like berry jam and chocolate. Other things that Cabernet goes well with, I like, if I'm trying to figure out what to pair with a wine, I like to look at where that wine was from originally. And in the case of Cabernet Sauvignon, it's originally from the Bordeaux region in southern France. So I would look for things that you would find in Bordeaux or in kind of central France, the Dordogne River Valley. And the things you're going to find there are braised meats. You're going to find like beef bourguignon. You're going to find all of these really dark, earthy, intensely flavored and fatty foods. All of those are going to go so well with a Cabernet. For those of you who like to consume chocolate with wine, if you're going to do that, I would recommend using at least 80% dark chocolate, because if you eat something sweet with a glass of wine, it's actually going to cancel out the sweetness in the wine and make the wine taste really bitter. So when we pair chocolate with wine, we're trying to bring out the sweetness in the wine. So when you pair like a really dark piece of dark chocolate, it actually makes the wine taste like berry jam. It makes it taste a little bit like pie. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you're really into that, I'd recommend not using Cabernet. Go for a Zinfandel, a red Zinfandel from California, which has a lot darker flavors and a lot less tannin content. So it's going to be a little bit smoother and a little bit better combination. I realize that, of course, I've gone over a little bit. If you guys need to leave, please feel free to do so. I would like to be respectful of your time, but I also would love to answer any questions that you guys have. Christian asked, you are going to a friend's. What wine do you drink? Do I have a go-to? Well, Yes and no. It really depends on the situation, what the weather is like, what friend it is, what we're going to be eating, if we're going to be eating at all. I have so many favorite wines. But if I'm going over to a friend's for dinner, I'll probably bring something that would be a nice appetizer wine, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Vouvray. There's another region in France called Vouvray, and they specialize in Chenin Blanc, which is kind of like a cross between a Sauvignon Blanc and a Chardonnay. You get a little bit of sweetness, but you get that crispness as well. Sometimes I'll bring a bottle of sparkling wine. My current favorite American sparkling wine is Mum Napa. Their rosé is delicious, and it's like 20 bucks a bottle. Champagne wise, what is it? Nicolas Fouillet, I think is what it's called. I think it's $40 a bottle also. It has a royal blue label with cursive writing on it. Beautiful. It's much better than Veuve Clicquot or any of those fancy ones that people insist on, and it's much cheaper. If we are doing something fancy like having a beef Wellington or cooking up some ribeyes or something, I'm probably going to go with a heavier French wine, either a right bank Bordeaux, and I say right bank because there are 3 subregions within Bordeaux. You have the right bank, which specializes a little bit more toward Cabernet Sauvignon heavy wines. The left bank is a little bit more Merlot heavy, and then kind of in between the rivers is kind of everything else. And the reason I brought that up and am saying Cabernet heavy and Merlot heavy is because all of the red wines in Bordeaux are blends. They're all blends of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and maybe sometimes Carmenere. But yeah, I'll grab a right bank Bordeaux, or I'll grab a Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is a Southern Rhone wine that is a blend of Syrah and Grenache. All of those are delicious. But if my friends like to drink, and if I'm just going over for a normal evening, I'll probably go to the wine store near me and find out what's on sale. I don't know if any of you live in Pennsylvania. I split my time between Pennsylvania and New York City. And in Pennsylvania, the wine store near my place, and actually at all of the Pennsylvania wine stores, they have the chairman's selection. So you can go in and get a $75 bottle of wine that has been marked down to $20. And I do that every time I go to the wine store. I like to try new things all the time. So sorry if that was an unhelpful answer, but I just like to drink all different wines, so I don't really have a specific go-to. What about with the Taco Bell $5 box? That's a great question. Because Taco Bell $5 box, I actually don't know what's in the Taco Bell $5 box. I haven't been to Taco Bell in years. I'm assuming it's some form of meat and tortilla and maybe some of the hot sauce or the fire sauce.
A lot of salt.
All right, it changes monthly. You never know. It's got a taco.
Okay. Well, what is the
burrito.
most recent one?
I don't know. Wait, it's some kind of like, it's like a Monterey crispy taco. It's probably great with wine.
Okay. You know what? It is. And some wines go really well with tacos. I don't know necessarily about the Taco Bell $5 box, but tacos in general love a crisp white wine. So the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc actually goes really well with tacos, especially if you have like a fruit salsa, like a mango salsa, pineapple salsa, something like that. For Taco Bell, maybe I'd go with a Pinot Noir. I know that sounds crazy, but Taco Bell has a little bit of an earthy quality to it, and Pinot Noir also does. And also because Taco Bell has meat in it, you want to balance out the fatness, like the fatty quality of the meat, with a little bit heavier wine than a Sauvignon Blanc. And the only reason I did that is because I heard that it's not real meat. Years ago, they were using like TVP or something. I don't even know. Okay, let's see. Do I have any thoughts on Italian wines?
We were just you did a good job.
Oh, thanks. Italian wines, I love them. I drink more French wine, but I absolutely love Chianti. They're absolutely beautiful wines. They're Sangiovese based wines, and they're light and delicious and fruity and acidic, and they go really well with Italian food. Anything with a red sauce is going to be great with the Chianti. I also really like Barolo. I like Valpolicella. I would definitely explore the Italian reds, but something you want to look out for when you're getting a bottle of Italian red wine, specifically Northern Italian red wine, there is something that happens in these Northern Italian red wines during their production that allows a little bit of wild yeast into the mix. When we are producing wine, we generally use Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is brewer's yeast, but there are wild yeast floating around everywhere. We're covered head to toe in it like our entire life. And so when you're producing wine, sometimes it can get in there, and specifically a type of yeast called Brettanomyces. And this will cause a Brett aroma in a Northern Italian red wine. And the easiest way to describe this is either wet horse or barnyard aroma. So if you get this in a Northern Italian red wine, you pour yourself a glass and you're like, wow, this smells like a cow patty. Don't worry, just swirl and keep swirling. And then maybe after 30 seconds to a minute, you'll come back and all of that barnyard will have dissipated. So keep that in mind. But yes, Italian wines, drink them, love them. You can usually get a pretty good deal on them as well. Let's see. Last thing, I realized I didn't really introduce myself and why you should trust what I'm saying about wine. So I'm originally from the Columbia Valley in Washington State, grew up right in the heart of the wine region there, moved to New York City to study classical music. I'm actually a classical oboist, and I do that most of the time. But in between my degrees in oboe, I took a year off and became a sommelier, did all of my WSET training that Priscilla is going through right now. And then for the last 15 years, I've had two careers side by side, one tasting everybody through anything that has alcohol in it. And specifically, my focus is pairing with foods to affect the flavors of the wines. But then at the same time, I've been playing with the New York Philharmonic, the American Ballet Theater on Broadway, and I'm actually the professor of oboe and chamber music at Montclair State University in New Jersey. So if any of you are Montclair based, stop on over. I'm there Monday through Wednesday.
You also mentioned, didn't you, you have some sort of a relationship to Northeastern?
Yes, actually my
Happy
partner,
accident.
who is asleep downstairs, went to Northeastern for undergrad and then moved down to Florida for med school. But yeah, so I have a Northeastern connection, and actually I have several friends who also went to Northeastern. So definitely support your organization, and thank you for supporting me and supporting this wine. Cheers, everybody. Are there any other questions before we go? No. Did anybody get drunk, like full on drunk? No? You guys are much more responsible than I am. Okay, on that note, it has been requested that we do a screenshot. So if you would not like to be in the photo, you can turn off your camera, but please be in the photo because it's fun. So everybody, I'm gonna have to take two because there are more of you than can fit on my screen. So everybody, since I don't know which screen you're gonna be on, everybody just hold up your wine and smile. Cheers, everybody. There's one. We'll do one more. Keep smiling. Cheers. Perfect. Okay. Well, on that note, drink good wine. Try to stay above $10. Certain cases you can get away with $8 or $9 if it's like a Vinho Verde from Portugal or if it's on sale. But just so you know, those wines like the Carlo Rossi, the Yellowtail, things like that, that always give you a headache. They always give you a headache because they are hacked into existence. The reason they're able to be produced so cheaply is they make a quick fermentation of the grape juice, and then rather than aging in oak or allowing it to develop over time. They want to get it out into the market. So they'll add food coloring, they'll add flavoring, they'll add oak chips instead of aging it in an oak barrel. So a lot of people who have a histamine response to oak will often get really sick from something like that. So spend $2 extra on the bottle and you'll save yourself a headache and you'll have a much better product. Yeah, cool. Anything else before we go? I've kept you 12 minutes over, so I want to make sure that you guys get the most of it, but also have a nice evening. Anything? No? Okay. Senia says, when are we doing this again? I would like to point out that Confetti Events not only has me doing wine tastings, we also do beer tastings, bourbon tastings, whiskey tastings, tequila tastings. I'll taste you through anything, and Confetti can make that happen for you. So on that note, I'm gonna go. I hope you all have a fantastic evening and a wonderful weekend. Drink better wine and have a great time. Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Best testing I've ever had.
Go us.
Thank you.
So thank you
Bye,
so much,
everybody.
and